This story is told from a female perspective. It happened to me a couple of months ago. I was on a dating app called Tinder. I matched with this one guy that I found attractive. He had a clean-shaven head and was more appealing compared to the other guys on the app. His profile said he was the same age as me, 25. The bio in his profile was intriguing. It read, "I am the most versatile person you will ever meet. I compare myself to a chameleon because I like to be different and spontaneous, randomly. You should join me." This made me compelled to chat with him. He then sends me a direct message saying, "Hi, I'm Dennis." I sent him a message back introducing myself and asked him what brings him on Tinder. He responds by saying, "Want to have dinner at my place tonight?" Ignoring the fact that I just asked him a question. Without hesitation, I messaged, "Sure." I usually wouldn't be so forward with someone I just met online, but something seemed compelling about this guy. He then sent me his address and mentioned that he'll be inviting a few friends. I messaged him back saying, "Okay," and waited till then. Later that night, I drove to his address and arrived at his front door. As soon as I'm about to knock on the front door, it opens, with Dennis staring dead at me. He had a blank expression on his face and didn't say a word. I found this very, very bizarre and creepy. About 10 seconds later, he says hi, then leans over to give me a hug. He tells me to come inside and I stupidly go inside. As we arrive inside, I sit on the couch and Dennis immediately asks me if I want anything to drink. I tell him water, please. He then tells me that Patricia only drinks tea. I was confused by who he was referring to. I asked him who Patricia was. He then tells me that she is one of his friends that he invited over. I tell him okay. Then he proceeds to get me some tea in his kitchen. A couple of minutes pass and the most bizarre thing happens. Dennis comes out of the kitchen with 2 cups of tea, dressed as an adolescent child. He wore a yellow hoodie and blue track pants. The clothes honestly looked like it belonged to a teenage boy. He places the 2 cups of tea on the table and reintroduces himself again, saying his name is Hedwig, in a creepy child's voice. I found this really disturbing and assumed that this was some sort of sick joke. I awkwardly put on a fake smile and go along with the alleged joke. At this point, he tells me, "Drink the tea," again in a disturbing child's voice. I really didn't want to, and knew I had to get the hell out of there. So I cleverly say, "Don't we have to wait for your friend Patricia?" He got angry and said that if I don't drink it, he will release the beast. He honestly sounded like the type of child that throws tantrums when their parents don't buy them things that they want. I was trembling in fear and didn't know if he was armed or had a knife on him, so I drank it. The room suddenly started becoming blurry, and I eventually started fading, then blacked out. I assume it was from whatever he put in the tea. I then remember waking up on the floor and seeing a woman standing in front of me. The woman was wearing burgundy. Looks like a burgundy long sleeve shirt, black skirt and some heels. I eventually get up from the floor and rub my eyes to see that the woman was Dennis, dressed as a female. I remember thinking to myself, this guy is a psycho. He then said, "I'm Patricia. Would you like to have a tea party with me?" in a female-like voice. I thought to myself, this guy is so fucked up. I acted fast and told him, "I'll be interested in a tea party only if you invited Hedwig back," which was the teenage boy he imitated earlier. Surprisingly, he obliged and walked back into the kitchen to supposedly get Hedwig. I immediately used this opportunity to haul ass out of there and drive home. It's been a month since the incident occurred. I haven't taken effort to report it to the police. I don't know if that was the smartest decision, but as I tell you this story, it still resonates with me until this day. Release the beast. Release the beast. One night, while walking home, It started raining. Just what I needed, I thought to myself. I had no umbrella and I was in the middle of a road that crosses a forest. With no place to cover, I decided to keep walking and wait for a car to pass, and maybe hitchhike. Around 10 minutes later, I started listening to a car approaching from behind. I looked back and the car stopped by my side. Slowly, the car window opens, and I could see a man inside. It was dark, so I couldn't see his face. I heard the man ask, "Do you need a ride, son?" I told him yes, please, because there's no way I was going to keep walking in this rain. This guy looked like an old man. He was skinny, with a wrinkly face. He didn't look dangerous at all. He actually seemed nice. We did some small talk until I was reaching my destination. I told the guy to drop me here and I could walk the rest. The rain had stopped by now. The guy said nothing, so I repeated again. "You can drop me here." He says, No, not yet. You're not ready." What? I thought to myself. I'm not ready for what? I was getting nervous, so I tried one more time. "Please, sir, let me out here." He looks at me with his eyes wide open. Now I can see his face. The guy looked old and his face was wrinkled with sharp teeth, and I said no. I felt sick and I thought I was going to throw up. I was stuck there with that guy. I thought my only way out would be to open the door. I tried opening the door, but it was locked and I am in full panic by now. I feel a weakness going through my body as I feel myself pass out. Finally, my eyes close and everything goes black. I woke up in the bed. I look around and it looks like a shack. The place looks trashed and smells terrible. At the side of the bed, I see some basic medical equipment. I listen to footsteps outside near the door. Without having a lot of time, I pretend I am still knocked out and I wait. I don't keep my eyes shut. I leave a small opening. I wanted to see who was coming. The door opens. I see someone. I keep opening and closing my eyes very little to make sure he doesn't see I'm watching him. He reaches my side of the bed. He turns to the other side and starts picking up the medical tools. What is he going to do to me, I thought. With very little time to make a decision, I needed to do something quick or God knows what will happen. I gained courage and I slowly get up. I started running to the door. While I was reaching to the door, I took a glimpse on the right and there was an open door. Inside is an image that I would never forget. I saw a body of some random person and I wanted to throw up, but right now, I needed to escape. I opened the door and I ran through the woods. It was very dark. I couldn't see where I was going, but I didn't care. I just needed to be far away from that place. Finally, I arrived at the main road and I kept running. I found an open diner. I went inside and used their phone to call the cops. I gave the police a report of what happened. Then they took me safely home. A few months later, I saw on TV that the fugitive from an asylum was caught. He was living in a cabin in the woods. It was the same guy that kidnapped me. Suddenly, I had the same feeling from that night. But at least the guy had been caught. Never again in my life have I hitchhiked. I was a regular on the chat rooms on the deep web, back when I was a sophomore in high school. Literally every day for about 5 months straight. Before school, after basketball practice, and before bed. I was always on there. I'd chat with this one guy all the time because he seemed really cool. He'd always link me to funny videos. In about a month 3, it all changed. He would send links to weird rooms, then the dark live streams. So one day I was on a stream, and there was a lady chained to a bed and gagged. Then I clicked off of the stream, and I tried to click something else, then the mouse quit moving. It started to move by itself, and clicked back on the stream with the lady chained down. When it opened back up, the lady was still there, and a man with a potato sack on his head was on the screen. The potato sack only had one eye cut out, and that's all. There was a table that had a hacksaw, gun, and scissors with a shaving razor. The man spoke into the camera and said, "Pick one." Everyone picked the scissors and the razor. He then shaved her head. After that, he said, "Pick another one." And everyone picked a gun. He picked it up, held it to her head, while the woman was screaming, and then I gained control of the mouse and clicked off of it. I was thinking to myself, what am I watching? Then my mouse clicked on another stream. It was the same man with a barrel with what looked like boiling water in it. I tried gaining control of the mouse, but I couldn't. Then I heard a different woman crying in the background. The camera then zoomed out, and on the screen I saw the barrel, a bat, and a flamethrower. Then the masked man asked which one. The chat was split between the boiling water and the flamethrower. The man then said, "I'll use both then." He rolled the crying woman into the side of the camera, turned the flamethrower on, and aimed it at the barrel. At this point, he had her chained to the wheelchair. The water in the tub was boiling out of control. She started kicking and screaming even more. The man called another guy in the room. They unchained her, picked her up, and threw her toward the barrel. The screen then went black, but I could clearly hear the woman screaming and splashing. For about 2 minutes, that's all I heard. Then it stopped. The screen then came back and it was focused on the barrel. The two men just stood there, staring at the camera, breathing heavily. And that woman, I don't know how to explain it, but it was a terrible sight. Then the stream ended. I closed out of everything, and I sat there in silence for a while. Honestly, that wasn't my last time on the dark web because I honestly enjoyed it. There are a lot of people out there like me, more than you think. Be careful about going on the deep or the dark web. I had 3 really good friends, and their names were Kevin, Ryan, and Tommy. Every summer our parents would take us on a vacation. We always stayed in a remote cabin in the forest of Minnesota. The cabin was located on a large island in the middle of Lake Vermilion. Eventually, when we were old enough, our parents let us go to the cabin on our own for the first time. When we got there, we parked the car on the gravel road beside the lake. Then we had to take a boat across the lake, about half a mile to reach the cabin. There were a few other cabins on the island, but they were all at least half a mile away. The cabin was quite small and only had a kitchen, a bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. At night, it was pitch black. There were no street lights for miles, and the only light came from the moon. There were no curtains on the windows, so when you were sleeping at night, you could see the moon shining down on the trees and the lake outside. On the 3rd night of our trip, we set up a campfire by the edge of the lake. The moon was full and a pale white glow was shimmering across the lake. We were gazing up at the stars when all of a sudden we heard a splashing sound, as if something was moving about in the water. Ryan suddenly stood up and pointed, saying, "What the hell is that?" We all looked in the direction he was pointing, peering into the darkness. After a while, I couldn't make out what he was pointing at. I'll never forget the feeling of terror that came over me. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and goosebumps appeared on my arms. I was paralyzed in fear. Out in the middle of the lake, there was a woman's head. It was just floating there on the surface of the water, staring directly at us. She had pale white skin and long black hair. Her hair was matted to her face. The rest of her was submerged or not even there. We tried to tell ourselves that it was just a loon. They are black and white birds that hunt at night, diving deep into the water. It didn't look like a loon, but that's what we tried to convince ourselves it was. We threw some more wood on the fire and tried to forget about it, but it still gave me the creeps. About an hour later, I had to go to the toilet, so I walked down to the edge of the dock and peed into the lake. Looking out over the moonlit lake, I noticed the thing was still there, but now it was much closer. It still looked like the woman's head, and it still seemed to be staring right at me. Its face was still extremely pale, as if it hadn't been out in the sun for years, and I could easily make out some facial features, the eyes and the nose. A feeling of incredible unease came over me as I realized it couldn't be a loon. There was no way a loon could just tread water for that long. There were no ripples around it either. It wasn't moving at all. It was just standing there, stiff as a board, submerged in the water. I immediately zipped up my pants and ran back up to the dock, to where my friends were, sitting around the campfire. I told them what I'd seen, but none of them dared to go down to the dock to take a closer look. We tried to tell ourselves it was just a log or a tree branch, just floating out in the water. I could tell everyone else felt uneasy too. None of us really believed that. We went back into the cabin and we shut the door, locking it behind us. It was very late and we just needed sleep. None of us mentioned a thing in the lake. We were all trying to avoid talking about it, honestly. There were no curtains on the windows, and I was getting ready for bed. I couldn't help but taking one last look. Peering out of the window, I could see the lake clearly, illuminated by the full moon. But the thing wasn't there anymore. It had completely vanished. I let out a sigh of relief, thinking it was a log that just floated away, or else it sank below the surface. Or perhaps it had been a loon, and it finally flown away. It was very hot that night, and we had to sleep with the windows open. My friend Tommy and I slept in one bedroom, and my two other friends slept in the other. We left our bedroom doors open. I was finding it hard to sleep, very, very hard. It was the middle of the summer and there wasn't even a slight breeze. The heat was stifling. As I lay there, I thought I could hear someone walking around outside the cabin. I kept my eyes tightly shut and tried to tell myself it was just my imagination. It sounded like someone with bare, wet feet, pacing back and forth. I was trembling with fear, but I felt so weak I couldn't move. The footsteps, they sounded like they were walking up the steps to the cabin door. I wanted to shout out to my friends, but I was frozen in terror. Then the footsteps turned around and sounded like they were running down the steps and toward the lake. After a while, the footsteps faded away. I reached over and shook my friend Tommy. He was already awake and he claimed he had heard the footsteps as well. Just then, I was startled to see Ryan coming running into our room. When he stepped into the moonlight, I could see his face and the expression on it was very, very disturbing. He told us we need to leave. I asked why. What did you hear? He said, let's just go. He insisted. Let's get to the boat and it's time to go. He wouldn't answer. He just ran back into his room. We followed him and found Kevin sitting on his bed, already packing up his things. Ryan was running around frantically grabbing his stuff and stuffing it into a bag. What's wrong? I demanded. Ryan, what the hell is wrong with you? Tell us. He just stopped in his tracks and stared at me. There was a haunted look in his eyes. I would never forget what he said. He told us he was turning over in his bed to get more comfortable when he suddenly saw at the top right corner of his window someone was peeking in. As soon as he set his eyes on it, the face vanished. He said all he saw was long black hair hanging down the window, ghostly white skin, and one large eye staring at him. When he said that, it chilled us to the bone. We realized that if the face was in the top right corner of the window, that meant the thing had to be damn near 8 feet tall, or else floating in midair. I felt like I was going to be sick. "Let's just go," Ryan said in a very serious tone. "Let's just go now." We all agreed and packed our stuff up as quickly as we could. We grabbed our bags and ran out of the cabin, locking the door behind us. As we scrambled down the front steps, I glanced to the side and I saw footprints, bare, wet footprints, in the dirt all around the cabin. We ran down to the boat and threw our stuff in. We untied the boat from the dock and we sped off. I looked back over my shoulder and stared at the island, but I didn't see anything moving. However, I had the strangest feeling that someone or something was watching us. When we finally reached the other side of the lake, we tied up the boat, stuffed our backpacks in the car, and drove off. We had been driving for about 10 minutes when, out of the blue, Ryan suddenly broke down sobbing. He kept saying over and over, "What was it, guys? What was it? What did we see?" On the way, we called our parents to tell them what happened. Ryan was freaking out, and we didn't know what to do. They told us to just get home safely and quickly. My friend's dad went up to the cabin a few days later and said he saw nothing out of the ordinary. However, he did mention that there were bare, wet footprints all around the cabin, which he thought was odd. Whatever Ryan saw in the window really hit him hard. After his breakdown, he had trouble sleeping and ended up having to go into therapy. They gave him some pills to calm him down and allow him to get a decent night's sleep. As time went on, he recovered and ended up being fine. But to this day, he still can't sleep unless the curtains on his window are completely shut. To this day, I still cannot explain what we saw on the lake that night. I never went back to the cabin. Tommy and Kevin have both gone back and everything was fine. But Ryan refuses to go back, and frankly, I'm with him on this one.